devotees
who are fully peaceful
are
extremely rare.
extremely rare.
We are reading here from 5 years, 11 months by Mother Vishaka Dasi. And do you have the page?
Top of 257.
Top, okay, top.
257. 8. No,
Top of
258.
257.
257.
9.
What to do except to go on doing what we were doing? Would Prabhupada want anything else? Oh, okay, this was the Mother Yamuna was testing the cookbook on Vishaka because she didn't know anything about cooking. So if she could do it, then anybody could do it. That was their idea. Okay. After testing more than 200 recipes, I could indeed tell urad from mung and cumin from fennel. Fennel is greenish. Did you know that?
The smells entirely different.
Yeah. I was far from expert, but the clear, comprehensive recipes enabled me to cook dishes that were, Yamuna told me, pleasing to Prabhupada and Krishna. Of course, real cooks could make tasty meals without recipes. Real cooks apply the principles and procedures of a tradition to make innovative dishes that were still in keeping with that tradition. The real cook's art was dynamic. They applied their expertise in unexpected and pleasing ways. And no matter how much they knew, they were keen to learn more. Jamuna was the maestro, I the novice. But the beauty of spiritual life was that even a novice's service, if done in the proper mood, could be accepted by Guru and God. Very important point. Very important point. Yes. Stretching beyond Yamuna and the Dinatarini's property were miles of woodlands. And after lunch, I'd take long walks on narrow forest paths that curved beneath fir and pine, maple and myrtle. Have you ever been to Oregon?
No.
Yes, in Oregon, it's surprising because I've been to Portland and they're all pine trees, all pine trees. Yeah. Here, there's both other deciduous trees of other kinds, but they're all pine trees. Chanting the Maha Mantra on my beads, accompanied by the songs of red-winged blackbirds, wood thrushes, and starlings, even as I felt a dark cloud of separation from Prabhupada hanging over our future and ached for it to dissipate, I also felt fortunate and sheltered to be with two good friends and to have such sublime service. After losing myself in Krishna's forest artistry for an hour or two, I returned to the ashram rejuvenated. So the Shastra says that the forest is the mode of
Goodness.
goodness. Yeah. City, villages are the mode of passion. Liquor houses, brothels are the mode of ignorance. Yadubara's next letter was dated May 19th. Well, this was just after he had been to Rishikesh. Yeah. It is now 1:15 a.m., the first night with Prabhupada in Vrindavan. He's sitting, translating, and resting every night on the roof above his rooms. It is a very beautiful scene to see him sitting at his translating table with one table lamp on, surrounded by black except for the temple domes looming up nearby. Prabhupada told TKG, any idea who that is?
Tamal Krishna Goswami?
Yes. That's what they used to call him. TKG, that Vrindavan is his home, his residence. Bombay is his office. And Mayapur is for worshiping the Supreme Lord, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Prabhupada had been seriously ill several times before this. Yamuna told us she'd been in San Francisco when he'd had a heart attack in 1967. At that time, he'd asked all his students to pray to Lord Krishna, my dear Lord, my spiritual master has not yet completed his work. Please protect him. Jamuna and everyone else in the San Francisco temple had stayed up all night praying and chanting. Later, when he'd recovered, Prabhupada had written to them, my dear boys and girls, I am so much obliged to you for your prayers to Krishna to save my life. Due to your sincere and ardent prayer, Krishna has saved my life. I was to die on Tuesday, certainly, but because you prayed sincerely, I am saved. Now I am improving gradually and coming to my original condition. Now I can hope to meet you again and chant with you Hare Krishna. I am so glad to receive the report of your progressive march and hope there will be no difficulty to your understanding Krishna consciousness. My blessings are always with you, and with confidence you go on with your chanting. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Questions about this? So yesterday we were talking, and Srila Prabhupada said in a lecture that in 1898 there was bubonic plague that was ravaging in Calcutta, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it was just getting worse and worse, and the bodies were piling up in the street. So when Babaji, he organized Sankirtan, and they were going to all parts of Calcutta, even Christians, Muslims, Parsis, Hindus, everybody was joining together with a Sankirtan. And by that Sankirtan, the plague subsided. But Srila Prabhupada commented, but that was actually a aparad, nam aparad, chanting, using the holy name for material purpose. Yeah. So, but what about this?
This was not a
This-
material
but
purpose, and he wanted to be saved. He wanted to be saved so he could write, he could translate more books.
Yeah.
That's right. So that's a good purpose.
It's not just let me be healthy so I can enjoy life, but let me continue my service to Krishna. So a devotee, a Vaishnava, will take care of their body as necessary, not more than necessary, but as necessary. Why? Not for enjoying, but so they can use it to serve Krishna. Yeah. So that's the difference here. So they were chanting, and the people in Calcutta were chanting, and both were effective, but this chanting, the chanting is to use the chanting for service purposes. That's the point. That's not offensive, but if we chant, so see what we can get. And there's a famous prayer that they chant in Pure Land Buddhism called Nam Yo Renge Kyo. Have you ever heard that? Nam Yo Renge Kyo. Somebody was telling me that a person was trying to preach to me, this a Buddhist person. He said, if you chant this, you'll get all of your need. You'll get cars, you'll get money, you'll get this. Yeah. Okay. And maybe so, but that's not the purpose of chanting. So chanting for service, right? Okay. And my understanding, it was a stroke, not a heart attack here. But the heart attack was on his travel journey across the ocean first time. After this heart attack, when he had recuperated enough to travel, Prabhupada had returned to India for 5 months. He first went to San Francisco, then he went to India to regain his health fully. Once restored, he preached so vigorously and traveled so extensively that his young disciples could hardly keep up with him. 7 years later, in Vrindavan in 1974, he again became seriously ill. This time, he said, due to the looseness of the leaders of his movement, 80% of whom were not strictly following the rules and regulations. As in 1967, his students throughout the world held continuous kirtan and prayed to Krishna for his recovery. 2 weeks later, Prabhupada's fever finally broke. He resumed his normal schedule and his students resumed theirs. Prabhupada's illnesses, Jamuna said, were not from ordinary causes and were not caused by ordinary and were not cured by ordinary methods. Now, caught in the throes of Prabhupada's current health crisis, the three of us chanted Hare Krishna, feeling distraught and helpless. The next letter intensified our feelings. May 21st, 1977. Today, Prabhupada told TKG that there were 2 courses at this time in regards to his health. One is to fight for survival, and the other is to prepare for departure. Prabhupada said we must prepare for the latter. Prabhupada is not getting better. It is amazing to see how Prabhupada pushes on his translation even at this time. You know, the Srimad Bhagavatam class this mornings in the morning time that we're going now. This is Srila Prabhupada was translating and commenting right now at this time. That Srimad Bhagavatam that's going on in class now. It is a great lesson for all of us to push on preaching no matter what obstacles are there. Prabhupada said today that the Vaishnava's only concern is to alleviate the difficulties of others. Then he said Kirtan and Bhagavatam are very pleasing to the ear and mind, pointing to his ear and heart respectively, and that this is the real medicine. Again, he said that we should not worry. As I was reading from the introduction to first volume Bhagavatam to Prabhupada, I could understand that Prabhupada will never die, that he lives on in his books, just like he so gloriously and emphatically stated in the news conference in San Francisco. Simply, we have to take his teachings very seriously, become Krishna conscious ourselves, and make others Krishna conscious. That will please Prabhupada, Krishna, and everyone. What I'd felt at that news conference, I again felt, but more emphatically. I'd take Prabhupada over his books any day. It was like the difference between studying incredible recipes and eating an incredible meal. Yadubar's last letter to me in Grants Pass, that's Oregon, dated May 30th, didn't offer hope. He quoted Prabhupada saying, "Everyone has to die, so we should die gloriously by hearing and chanting. Just keep up this sound vibration. That is why I have brought all of you here. Please do not leave me." The chanting is going on very nicely, from 7 to 10 a.m., 3 to 9 p.m., and 1 to 5 a.m., with 6 devotees chanting for 1.5 hours. Only a very small pair of kartals is played, no wampers, and the kirtan is very simple and sweet. Prabhupada hears most of the time and nods his head in time and sometimes claps softly. Prabhupada said that this hearing and chanting cure is so nice that if that effective or not, it is still glorious. In their spotless temple room, Jamuna, Dinatarini, and I had a long, soulful kirtan. There was nothing else to do. Chapter 18, 5 years, 11 months, and 16 days. In June, Yadubar returned to the US. And in September, he and I went to Juhu, where the entire front part of Hare Krishna land, formerly a jungle cum dump, had become a construction zone where a graceful white marble dome, flanked on each side by matching smaller domes, dominated the south end of the property. A magnificent white marble temple room beckoned in the center, and 6-story twin circular guest houses towered over the north end. Prabhupada had just completed a taxing yet joyous trip to one of his ashrams in England, Bhaktivedanta Manor. Okay, yeah. Now, despite the constant noise from the hundreds of on-site construction workers, Prabhupada had chosen to stay in his rooms on the top floor of one of the twin towers. I'd not seen him for months, and his appearance shocked me and sent a stab of tenderness and pain through me. As he sat cross-legged on his bed in a darkened room, his satisfyingly rounded head was as beautiful as ever, but his cheeks were gaunt, and his kurta hung loose over his thinning frame. His countenance showed a life lived wisely. His eyes were moist and alert, and his face was kindly and unperturbed by the rapid demise of the body it was attached to. He seemed so removed from this world that I could have mistaken him for a Vrindavan ascetic who spent his days and nights absorbed in beatific meditations, instead of the founder of an international confederation of Krishna conscious centers, the scholarly author of a library of scriptural books, and the fearless promoter of bhakti yoga. But Prabhupada was still Prabhupada, just as by nature sugar is sweet and water is wet. Similarly, Prabhupada was Krishna's servant. Weakness had slightly slurred his speech, yet being in his presence was being in the presence of something beyond him that was immeasurably great. Being in his presence was electrifying. His words revealed a memory and intellect as sharp and quick as ever, as he asked Yadubar and me how we were, what we were doing, and of the activities in the Los Angeles ashram where we'd been. From Prabhupada's vibrant interest in others' well-being, a concern so deep in him that it seemed more enduring than his very life, by osmosis, in his presence, I felt more concern for others. He pulled me out of my habitually myopic orbit. How much I needed Prabhupada in my life. He evoked my selfless desire to give to others. He led me on the best of all adventures, the discovery of the wealth of my own heart. I trusted him implicitly. Seeing him in his current decrepit condition, my whole being ached for him and went out to him. He was transparent. He hid nothing and had nothing to hide. He was, as always, in Krishna's hands and completely pleased to be there. How gladly I would have traded my youth and health for his age and infirmity. Prabhupada's condition steadily worsened, and in October he returned to his sacred Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan. Standing with a small group at the side gate of the Krishna Balaram temple, I watched as Prabhupada's car inched down the narrow, rutted road. Upon arriving, I don't know if you've been to the Vrindavan temple, Krishna Balaram temple. Yeah, on the side, there's a side road that goes down, so you can go enter from the side. That's the road here we're talking.
Yeah, which is quite narrow.
Yes. I watched as Prabhupada's car inched down the narrow, rutted road. Upon arriving, he was transferred to a wooden palanquin, and I photographed him sitting high above me. Oh, in the palanquin, I guess. The gray sky forming a vast, must have been rainy season. This is October. Is that not rainy season? No.
October is not rainy season.
No. I wonder why the sky is gray. Okay. Forming a vast backdrop to his somber, regal, and frighteningly feeble form. His head bobbing to the rhythm of his bearer's stride. Since I'd seen him in Juhu, minimal eating had scooped caverns in his cheeks, eroded his limbs to sticks, and drained his energy. Yet devotion still dignified his demeanor and deepened his eyes. Once Prabhupada was in his quarters, I ran to my guest house room, overcome by his new look, but weeping, could not begin to address the irremediable parting and looming loss, the terrible weeks of anxiety, uncertainty, helplessness, and emptiness that confronted us. Prabhupada lay on his bed in his large front room. Devotees came from throughout the world to chant and read, to face the unfaceable. Now our loyalty to Prabhupada must encounter his passing, must accept it, must try to grow from it, and must continue in spite of it. Only in continuing to follow, despite his passing, could our loyalty learn the true extent of its commitment, of the spiritual attachment that transcends mortality. Death cannot part the sincere student from the spiritual teacher. Simply by continuing to follow, the student triumphs over death, or rather in the face of the student's determination, death shrinks to insignificance. Prabhupada dedicated his Srimad Bhagavatam, first published in India in 1962, to his spiritual master. He lives forever by his divine instructions, and the follower lives with him. Who would like to read next?
Kavita, do you want to go ahead?
Okay. Daily, Prabhupada's young disciples put his frail body on a palanquin and, bearing it on their shoulders and accompanied by a kirtan procession, circumambulated the Krishna Balram temple and then entered the temple room where they placed Prabhupada, still seated in his palanquin, before each of the three deity altars. Prabhupada gazed at his lords, and we gazed at him. He offered his homage to them. He offered ours to him. We offered ours to him. A heavy churning, unrelievable anguish pressed us. One morning, Yadubar and I went to the workplace of a young Spanish-speaking devotee who made brass 9-inch high deities of Sri Chaitanya and Nityanand Prabhu. Both had a well-proportioned form, a happy expression, and a dancing stance, and we purchased them. I sewed a sequined outfit for them, white cloth for Nityanand and yellow for Sri Chaitanya, and began walking to the Yamuna for their daily bath water. As the river was far from the temple, this solo venture took a few hours and offered relief from the trauma and the daily mini dramas that surrounded Prabhupada's condition. Many of
Prabhu, do you know who carried him on the palanquin?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Two devotees, usually front and back, at least two, maybe four.
Many of Prabhupada's god brothers came to visit him, and as they sat together on a bench at the head of his bed, with great endeavor, Prabhupada honored them by folding his hands and asking their forgiveness for offenses he'd committed to them in the course of his preaching. His parting words to his spiritual brothers were unconditionally loving. Without exception, his god brothers told him that he should rest assured that no offense was taken. On the contrary, they said, Prabhupada's astounding devotional service must have given their spiritual master, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, exceptional pleasure. Although Prabhupada's voice was a whisper and his supine body, covered with a white sheet, was, in his own words, a bag of bones, Pradyumna knelt by the side of his bed, read the Sanskrit texts of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and Prabhupada continued to translate and comment. Other disciples huddled around the bed in a scene reminiscent of one in the Bhagavatam, where grandfather Bhishma, lying on his deathbed and surrounded by his well wishers, relatives, and heirs to the kingdom, used his final breaths to offer invaluable knowledge. Yadubar repeatedly asked permission to film Prabhupada translating, but Tamal Krishna Goswami, TKG, Prabhupada's secretary, was hesitant. He remembered how the bright lights had disturbed Prabhupada in Denver and thought that, especially in Prabhupada's present condition, the lights and our presence would again be taxing. On October 21st, Prabhupada, lying motionless, conversed with TKG. TKG, Yadubar wants to film you translating. Is that all right? You don't mind? We can have a little light here while he films for about half a minute. It wouldn't disturb you. Prabhupada, Yadubar is a good devotee. TKG, Yadubar is a good devotee, very dedicated devotee. You remember he cooked bati chachuri, very nice, also
Chachari.
chachuri.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. He was cooking for you in Rishikesh, massaging, very intelligent. Prabhupada, yes. TKG. His wife is also intelligent. Vishakha. Prabhupada. Yadubar has become a devotee first. TKG. Has become first Prabhupada? Prabhupada. First devotee before his wife. TKG. First devotee before his wife. Yes. You convinced him. He did not come here thinking to become a devotee. Remember, he came for photography work? Prabhupada. Yes. TKG. But his good fortune was that he chose to photograph you, Prabhupada, and the devotees. Prabhupada. Yadubar has freedom. TKG. What, Prabhupada? Prabhupada. Yadubar has freedom to do anything. TKG. Yadubar has freedom to do anything. Prabhupada. TKG. I think that will make his service very enhanced to know that. Yadubar and I sat at the foot of Prabhupada's large bed, becoming part of the cheerless scene, filming, recording, and photographing as Prabhupada used his last bit of energy to continue his lifelong devotional service, translating and commenting on the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. At this point, the purport to the 10th canto, chapter 13, the stealing of the boys and calves of Brahma, text 53. His words were slightly slurred and followed one another slowly, yet the content was cogent and pristine. Knowledge that reached out to us longingly and hauntingly, enveloping and transporting us to another world of awareness. One should understand that no one is independent, for everything is part and parcel of Krishna and is acting and moving by the supreme desire of Krishna. This understanding, this consciousness is Krishna consciousness. Such simple words expressing the deepest wisdom, spoken in such dire circumstances, went directly from Prabhupada's mouth into my headphones and vibrated in my ears. They at once transcended time and place and yet were utterly applicable to time and place. But I was unable to relate to them or to relate them to the situation. I could not understand that Prabhupada's heartbreakingly dwindled condition was the supreme desire of Krishna, that our recording one of his final purports was also the supreme desire of Krishna, and that his passing from this world would be also the supreme desire of Krishna. Yet death, like life, was Krishna. Prabhupada was in Krishna's grip. Even now, theirs was a relationship of love. I was an onlooker who failed to grasp the intimacy and sweetness of that relationship. Nearing the end of his long and active life, Prabhupada entered a period of reflection and judged his students' conduct differently. Words of appreciation and encouragement replaced reprimands. And Prabhupada also made unforgettable statements, as when he said to a senior student, "Don't think that this won't happen to you." When Jay Advait commented on the astonishing number of books Prabhupada had translated while he was traveling, opening centers, instructing, initiating, writing thousands of letters, managing, meeting people, and so on, Prabhupada said, "A little water wears the stone." To write daily was to eventually write volumes. On November 11th, the day of the great festival of Govardhan Puja, Prabhupada asked to be taken by bullock cart on the 14-mile path around Govardhan Hill. His Ayurvedic doctor said the bumpy ride would be bad for him. Devotees were divided. Some said if Prabhupada wanted to go, he should go. Others said such a trip would preclude any chance of recovery, and worse, that Prabhupada would die from it. But Prabhupada didn't go. Did he choose not to go, or did the devotees decide? Did Prabhupada choose not to go?
That's a whole story. There's an article in the dandavats.com about this. Devotees were in such anxiety. So they asked Srila Prabhupada's godmother, Krishnadas Babaji Maharaj, to ask him, please don't go. And so he acquiesced to his godmother's request.
And he also said at that time, that how much his disciples loved him. Wasn't it at that time that he said, look how much they...
Yes. Yes.
On the 14th of November 1977, my god sisters and I were having lunch when we heard the doctor's prognosis. Prabhupada had 5 hours left. We went to Prabhupada's room, surrounded his bed, and joined the kirtan, now one of distraught, raw emotion. Prabhupada's face was simply skin wrapped around bone and cartilage. Gone were his sobering and penetrating looks. Gone were his myriad expressions of love, devotion, patience, disapproval, humor, compassion, and liveliness. Gone were his expressive aristocratic gestures. As he awaited the final moment, his eyes were closed, his breathing unnoticeable. He was suspended in time, beyond everything in time, meditative, indrawn, and calm. In contrast, passions swelled and reeled around him. Stationed at the head of the bed, a Bengali disciple, Bhakti Charuswami, who had been too distracted to shave for several days, periodically poured a few drops of Yamuna water from a tiny silver pitcher into Prabhupada's slightly opened mouth. Prabhupada's sister, Pishima, grave and downcast, sat on the floor near Bhakti Charuswami. Our ever well wisher, our source of knowledge and guidance, of comfort and security and protection, of balance and maturity and enthusiasm, that person who was the focal point of our affection was departing. What could be said? What was left to say? Prabhupada, withdrawing deep within himself, was leaving his body, us, the Krishna Balaram temple, the earth planet, and the mundane world altogether. At first, hourly, and then minute by minute, the intensity of the devotee's agony increased, filling every crevice of the room. Where there was great love, there were also miracles. The devotees crying, wailing, bewilderment, moroseness, devastation, and above all, chanting of God's names expressed the extraordinary devotion that Prabhupada had aroused in them, young and old, men and women of every nationality and denomination. Standing on chairs next to each other at the foot of Prabhupada's bed, Yadubar filmed and I photographed and recorded. Since the time I'd frozen, when Prabhupada had danced at the Delhi Pandal, I had learned to immunize myself emotionally from any situation so that I could continue my service. And somehow that immunization remained strong. I shelved my feelings. Yadubar did the same. Devotees massaged Prabhupada's feet and stroked his arms. Long-faced sannyasis looked at him fixedly. Occasionally, the doctor checked Prabhupada's pulse. The air thickened with despair. At 7:24 p.m., the tumultuous emotion and chanting reached a climax, like the genuine crying of children for their father, and Prabhupada passed away. We were all asked to leave Prabhupada's room so his body could be bathed and dressed. When we had entered Prabhupada's quarters, it had been bright outside. When we left, night had settled in. We filed into the temple room, and soon devotees put Prabhupada's body on his raised seat. Until his body was interred, which would be 12 hours later, it was ceremoniously honored as it had housed a holy person of the highest caliber. With a voice of divine yearning, Prabhupada's godbrother Krishnadas Babaji sang a traditional song of separation in which the songwriter Narottam Das Thakur laments for the exalted persons who have passed on. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy, where has such a personality gone? I will smash my head against the rock and enter into the fire. Where will I find that person who is the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of such a devotee, Narottam Das simply weeps. Although I continued to record and photograph, part of me was in shock. It was irrational, but I never actually believed that Prabhupada would or could leave us. His limp form, sitting before me, was present yet inconceivable. I saw it, yet didn't see it. For me, by dint of his staunch conviction, Prabhupada had always been ageless, or rather, he was forever 75, the same age as when I'd met him. A world without precious and relishable moments with him, without his endless, ever fresh talk of Krishna, without his majestic radiance that evoked love and reverence, without his singing, his instructions, his awesome encouragement, his resounding devotional service, his all around awareness, his brisk morning walks along beaches and through parks, this would be a impossible, intrusive world of impossible and intrusive darkness. Grief swallowed me with an emptiness I'd never before even imagined. My thoughts became so fogged they were practically gone. Throughout the night, devotees sang to Prabhupada's slumped form, and the next morning, with Prabhupada's body on a palanquin, carried by his strong disciples, we went in a kirtan procession to the 7 major temples of Vrindavan. Local residents lined the streets to offer their last respects, along with garlands, food, and money to the great departed soul. Many gently touched Prabhupada's transcendental form and then touched their foreheads to procure his blessings. On our return to the Krishna Balram temple, we placed Prabhupada's limp form into a 10-foot pit that had been dug where Prabhupada had specified. The devotees sat him cross-legged on a marble slab and then packed salt around his body. A stick pointing straight up from the top of his head kept track of his position. We offered flowers into the pit and then filled it with earth. As Prabhupada had requested, his disciples cooked a splendid feast and sponsored similar feasts in Vrindavan's 7 major temples. We ate and rested, and the next day took a small brass deity of Prabhupada to Govardhan Hill, bathed him in the sanctified water of Radhakund, and circumambulated the hill with him in honor of one of his last wishes. I was unfamiliar with the various rites and confused about the future, and I had a hazy, cataclysmic feeling of foreboding, but mostly I was numb. In the summer of 1971, Vrindavan's devoted residents had captivated me when, following Prabhupada's suggestion, we'd made our first visit during our second Vrindavan trip. Prabhupada had introduced me to Krishna's sweetness and initiated me. On my third trip in October to November of 1972, I had sat at Prabhupada's feet before the tomb of the exalted Vaishnav teacher Rupa Goswami and heard Prabhupada tirelessly explain the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. I regularly returned to Vrindavan for pilgrimages and in 1975 for the grand opening of the Krishna Balram temple. This time, however, in that same Vrindavan where my spiritual life had set sail, that same Vrindavan where I had accepted Prabhupada as my captain and delighted in his presence and direction, I felt adrift in a violent, strange sea. All I wanted was a world with Prabhupada somewhere in it, making things clear, setting things right, propounding Krishna's words, and that was something I would not have against. I'd been his initiated disciple for 5 years, 11 months, 16 days, and 10 hours. In that time, he had offered me everything: culture, friendships, family, lifelong service, the possibility of profound personal divine realization and love. Now I needed to make sense of his offering. I needed to accept it, to live it, to let it become my own, to grow with it, to so awaken to its reality that I breathed it. And to so awaken to its reality, I let it breathe. Will I continue?
You can continue or someone else. We should, it's just 2 pages, the epilogue.
Yeah. One night, After he just returned to Bombay from Nairobi, Prabhupada was seated comfortably in his airy 7th floor Akash Ganga room overlooking the Arabian Sea. Warm breezes billowed his window curtains. Occasional car horns and the distant drone of heavy traffic melded with the murmurs of lapping waves. Silver reflections from the half moon glittered and gamboled along a sliver of sea. Seagulls had fallen silent. As Prabhupada exchanged pleasantries with several of his students in the gentle ambience of that room, a surge of joy washed over me. I felt, as I always did when reunited with him, the sleeping, dark places within me aroused and brightened. I felt his vigorous, multidimensional aura of devotion and service lift me into the surprising, delicious air of discovery and freedom. Once again, just hearing the sound of his voice aroused happiness in my heart. Prabhupada turned to me and, so Vishaka, how are you feeling? In your presence, I feel wonderful, I said. Prabhupada relaxed back against his large white bolster and closed his eyes. After a pause, he hummed slightly and said, I am also feeling the presence of my spiritual master. This occurred in February 1972, 35 years after Prabhupada's spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, had passed away. By the time Prabhupada passed away, 5.5 years later, he had completely and enduringly captured me. I loved him. I wanted to be with him always. I wanted to feel his presence in my heart. I wanted his words and spirit to breathe through me. But as Prabhupada had prophetically said one morning as he walked along a pristine beach, everywhere the followers make the whole thing bungled. After his passing, for disordered decades, Prabhupada's other followers and I sometimes choked and sometimes were suffocated by our own and each other's bungling. Many of Prabhupada's leading followers became so affected by Prabhupada's leading followers became so affected by power and prestige that they broke their vows, fell from their positions, and shattered the faith of thousands. In the midst of this turmoil, I became confused, deeply disturbed, and depressed. Feeling helpless, I clung to my initiation vows and attempted to focus on the basics that I am not my body, but a spiritual being who is part of Krishna, the Supreme Person, that I have an eternal loving relationship with Krishna, and that there is no material impediment to the process of bhakti, devotional service to Krishna. And that process will eventually enable me to connect with Krishna once and for all. I yearn to be like Prabhupada, personally unaffected by any and all types of disturbances. And I knew that whatever happened, no one and nothing could ever take from me the precious moments I'd spent in Prabhupada's company and the precious spiritual understandings he'd given me. Those were mine to treasure forever. Somehow, Yadubar and I continued to produce Krishna conscious documentary films. I continued to write and photograph, and we had 2 daughters who are beautiful in every way. Yet for me, the years froze into place after Prabhupada's passing. My mirror, which today reflects a serious looking old woman, betrays nothing of the bright flame that burns within her. The same flame that had long ago burned within a photographer in the prime of her life, camera in hand, noting the lighting, poised to capture Prabhupada's activities and expressions, poised to go anywhere with him. Over everything, that burning flame casts an expansive glow of unexpected love.
Haribol. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.
Haribol. Haribol.
Jai.
Haribo.
Comments, questions, anything? How was the reading?
Very touching, Prabhu, last.
last
Yes.
Emotional, very
I
much.
could really feel. You could.
Yeah,
What's that?
It was almost like
it
you
was lastly, I couldn't.
Very moving.
Mm-hmm.
Very moving. So we have to thank Mother Vishaka. I think we should. I'll write write her to give her appreciation that we finished the book. What do you think?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was really nice.
it was very,
It's always
Very
nice reading about
nicely.
Srila Prabhupada, but this book was very enjoyable.
lastly.
Yeah, she made us feel
Yeah,
the moment, even though we're far, far away from it. We could feel it.
Yes,
Mm.
she's a very reserved person on the outside, but you could see there's so much going on inside. Her relationship with Srila Prabhupada was very deep.
Mhm.
Very nice.
Very
Okay.
honest writing when she was not sure about how she felt, when she was not able to
yeah,
accept what he was saying. I mean, it was very real. I think the kinds of conflicts we go through in our minds, but sometimes we
yeah.
don't speak up, we don't say it out loud.
Yeah, we'd prefer not to say it out loud. Yes, we don't want to be embarrassed. Their position. Yeah. Very
It's
good.
amazing how almost all Prabhupada disciples, they feel so close to him. It's amazing. It's really, really amazing to see that. The amount of devotion and amount of love you all have, and you guys pretty much
Yes.
gave up your life for him, and I don't know if I will ever get to that. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Through his books were so emotional, but if we would have seen everything and we spent with him, that would have been
Well,
a spiritual.
you get. I mean, I'm reading this and I'm getting new understanding of Srila Prabhupada by reading it. So you get the same benefit that way. And, just like it was Rukmini. Queen Rukmini. She was the daughter of who? The king of Vidarbha. What was his name? So how did she get so attached to Krishna?
Just by hearing about him.
Yeah, Narad Muni
Yeah.
told about Krishna. And so then she decided she never met him. She never met Lord Krishna, but just by hearing from Narad Muni, she said, that's it. I'm not accepting Shishupal. It's only Krishna I'm taking. That's it. So the transcendental hearing process is the method to we get attachment. So, Srila Prabhupada is our guru. He's also your guru. Not maybe not diksha, but shiksha also. Shiksha means instructing guru. So the importance of developing the relationship with Srila Prabhupada and Krishna is paramount. Yeah, for ISKCON.
I forgot to tell you about last 2 days we.
You were with him that you must have felt so much.
Prabhu. చూసాను
I didn't
really?
I didn't go to Vrindavan at that time. No, there was a call that Prabhupada wanted everybody to go to Vrindavan, and I had a plan to go, but then the temple authorities didn't let me go. So my devotee was going to pay my way.
But at least you have the good memories, with him.
Yeah. Yes.
That's what.
Yes.
Do you dwell on that thought? Do you keep revisiting that and say, oh, I wish I had? I mean, do you?
Well, I held a grudge against there was a specific devotee who stopped me from going, and I held a grudge against that person for a while. But he was just and actually Prabhupada said because there was a point where devotees had gone to Vrindavan, and then many of them left to go back to their places of service. And Prabhupada said, "Oh, I have become poison," because so he wanted people. Srila Prabhupada wanted people there. He wanted his devotees there to be with him, but other people, the people didn't understand that as best they could. So anyway, that happened. Nothing I can do about that. But I did hold a grudge for a while. I don't hold a grudge anymore.
Yeah. Not worth it.
You feel that time, and I want to see all the children, like you were all for like his children, he must have felt.
Yeah.
Mm. And he's with all his children. He's with all of us. He doesn't have to be physically there, but he's there.
Yeah. So next book. Mother Shobha Radhe recommends Jamuna's and Dinatarni's book.
And Mother Kavita did too.
Oh, that's true. I forgot. So I don't think there are any of those in the store right now. Is Mother Jagannath Priya there?
Yes, I don't have any of those books in the store.
You don't have any of those. Okay. So we'd have to see if we can.
What's the name of the book?
A Life of Unalloyed Devotion or something like that. Let me check.
Oh, I think I have one. I think I have to look.
You can get it on Krishna.com.
It looks like Giriraj Maharaj's book just came out in the Juhu Temple, but I don't know if that's about Srila Prabhupada.
Oh yeah, it's about Srila Prabhupada. It just came out.
I saw him on Facebook holding the book, the hard copy of the book, so it looks like it.
Oh really? Because he said it was going to come out next summer. Yeah, okay.
Maybe this was a free copy.
Okay. Let's see here.
There's a part 1 and a part 2.
Yeah. Do you find it? Where?
I mean, I have it on Amazon. They have it on the Kindle format.
Yeah, Kindle. And how much is the Kindle?
$9.29.
Yeah, so that's relatively cheap.
Yeah.
If we get it on Kindle, we can share the screen.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can do that. Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
But what about what others? Let's see. Dronacharya, what do you think?
Sounds good to me.
Mother Jagannath Priya, what do you think?
I'm fine with that.
Mother Sita,
Yeah. No. Very good. I think that's a good one.
Mother Vindyavali,
Yes, Prabhu.
Mother Renuka. Mother Suman.
Mother Renuka types, yes.
What is the name of the book?
What's the name of the book?
Renuka typed yes.
It is.
She said right, typed yes.
What is,
Yes, she
what
did.
is the name of the book? You're talking about getting it on
It is A Life of Unalloyed Devotion
by
Yeah.
Sachidan. Who wrote this?
by Yamuna Devi. I'll send it to you, Mother.
Okay, no, I understood. Okay.
I'll text it to you.
No, that's fine. I understood. Yeah, it's fine with me. It's okay.
Okay.
ఆయన పిల్లలు
అదే అడుగుతున్నాను
Okay.
వింటారు
వాళ్ళది
వదిలేసారు అయినా అంత తండ్రి అంత మీదకు ఉన్నాడు.
Okay.
It is nice to read together, whatever book it is.
Yes. Okay. So it's decided.
Okay.
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam Adi Purusham
Tamaham bhajami.
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam Adi
Govindam
Purusham
Purusham
Tamaham
Tamaham
Bhajami.
Bhajami.
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam
Govindam
Adi
Purusham
Purusham
Tamaham
Bhajami.
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindam
Govindam
Adi
Purusham
Purusham
Tamaham
Bhajami.
Bhajami.
Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much for participating in this. So we did the Lilamrita Miracle on Second Avenue, Great Transcendental Adventure, 5 years and 11 months. So we still have many to go.
Yeah.
Many books to go.
That's good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much
A
for
pleasure to have your company.
Thank you.
we
Hare
had a very
Krishna.
good
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna to everybody.
everyone.